again, increasing your values, increasing your standard in terms of expectation of self is important, and increasing your standards of expectation of your business is important. And the moment that you start relaxing or turning a blind eye towards your business or your standards or whatever it is, that's a moment that the devil will kind of creep up in that situation and kind of create a little bit of chaos for you.
Real business owner.
Whatever your situation is currently is not your forever situation.
That's really what real business owners is, man. Like, we don't care where you come from, where are you going?
Our goal and our job is to reduce the mistakes that you have to make or the money that you have to lose.
You want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be successful, don't give up.
You learn, adjust, and continue to move forward. Welcome back to the Real Business Owners Podcast. This is Trevor Kale, as always, Cal Goodman.
What's up?
Guys, today we want to talk about just values, just in general, standards, and to be quite honest with you, I actually think that that's why the world is going down the shitter, is because it lacks standards and it lacks values. And so back in the day, there was a home and mother, father, values, standards, spanking your butt when you did something wrong, the old school way, right?
Definitely worked better.
It had its quirks. I'm not saying that the system was perfect, and there's no such thing as a perfect system.
Yeah.
But having standards and values is a good place to start, so that you have your North Star, whether it's within your business, whether it's within your personal life. It doesn't matter the area. What matters is if we didn't have standards or values as a society, zero standards, in other words, laws, rules.
Right.
A rule or a law is a standard that this is not okay. You can't do this, right? Without those things, what would the world look like? If we had zero standards, in other words, zero laws, everybody would have 3 or 4 locks on their doors. Their windows would be boarded up. At night, there would be extreme chaos, right? But because there are values and there are standards, the problem is that doesn't exist right now because there are values and standards, but they're weakening by the day, and you can see it deteriorate. People's standards are becoming less and less and less. That's why the average is looking far worse today than what average probably looked like 20 years ago, right? In terms of an individual's health. How do I know that? Obesity's on the rise. Mental health is rapidly declining in the masses, right? So if you start looking at data, the data says humans are starting to erode or fall apart. And when back in the day, when they had more standards and values just as American people, it was a better system to operate in, right? To a certain extent. Again, it has shortcomings like anything else. Somebody might say, well, what about this one-off situation? Cool, you can always find an exception to the rule. But when something is firm in what they believe and who they are, they can't be swayed with the crowd. And because nobody is really firm with what they believe, they are wherever they are. Wherever that crowd is, that's where they are in terms of thinking.
Yeah.
Like you come into this, you go like, what did we would go out all the time when we go out of town, when we were trying to earn business with people, and we'd go out with them at night and this, that, the other, trying to get to know them and say, hey, you should like us, trust us, we should do business together. And then it eventually got to the point where I was like, dude, I'm not going to go like 9 o'clock. I go to bed at 9:30 every single. That's a standard. Eventually I said, no, this is what I do. And it doesn't matter where I'm operating, whether it's at home or whether it's on the road or whatever it is. You know that I'm boring as fuck. Sorry. But that's my standard is boring. Right. I go to bed at like 9:30, but back in the day I'd be swayed. I'd be like, shit, if that's what everyone's doing, let's go do that then, even though it might not have been something I didn't want to do. Right. And so even I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. Everybody listening is guilty of it. But if you do not create standards and values in your life, somebody else will. They'll sway you to theirs. Right. And they might not have any either. And they're being swayed by somebody else. If you don't have any standards or values in your company, guess what? It could be swayed by anybody. Whether that's the lowest paid employee or the highest paid employee, it doesn't matter. Who are you and what do you stand for, right? That's an important concept. probably more so now than ever. Right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You know, drop the mic.
Yeah, well, it's just something that's really been heavy on my heart, because even going into this year, I could say probably going into this year that I operated at a higher level than an average person. But since average is so shitty, that's not even like something you shouldn't even brag about operating at a higher level than average right now.
Right.
Like
that's true.
That literally average is doing the least amount that you possibly can and expecting the most. That is what is average in the world today, right?
Right.
So literally, if you just show up, you don't call in sick, and you just do the least amount, but you're consistently there.
Yeah.
There you are.
Right.
You're one of them.
Yeah.
Right. And so I started thinking about it, and I was just like, well, sometimes we rest a little bit on our laurels and be like, well, I'm above like the average person, so like I'm good, right? Then you just stay on that same frequency. When it was like, but we're not as good as some of these other dudes that are like the top 1% in terms of discipline that everybody turns to. And I'm like, I wonder what that looks like on the other side of that, right?
Right.
And so it's like, again, increasing your values, increasing your standard in terms of expectation of self is important, and increasing your standards of expectation of your business is important. And the moment that you start relaxing or turning a blind eye towards your business or your standards or whatever it is, that's a moment that the devil will kind of creep up in that situation and kind of create a little bit of chaos for you. And so for me, as I look back even on my life, when I was a drug addict, I had no values or standards. Right. So I was swayed by Kale, bring me some good shit, dude. And you say, hey, it's good shit. Try this, Trev. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to try it because I have no standards and values, and I'm going to be swayed by you.
Yeah.
And really that's the issue in today's society is since they don't know what their standard or values are, they go with the flow.
Yeah.
And then going with the flow is average. So therefore they end up just being average. And I don't want an average business.
No, yeah.
I don't want to be an average individual because, again, average, obesity's on the climb. Yeah. Mental health is on a rapid decline in the mass. Like these are the average numbers.
Yeah.
So I don't want it.
Right.
I don't give a fuck if I got to pound my face in the fucking pavement every day for an hour a day. If you say that is going to make progress outside of the norm, fucking, I'm open-minded. Let's try it. Like that's just really where I'm at right now. Right.
It's good.
And so, and when you actually plant your flag in values and standard and you don't sway from it, like there's a lot of power in that.
Right.
Even if it means kind of standing alone, but at least you're the only one in the picture in that frame that you know what you stand for.
Yeah.
And everybody else is just on the outside because that's where everybody else is. And everybody else doesn't know what they stand for. So there's like, oh, this guy, what a weirdo. He stands for this and that,
Right.
And looking around like, how should I react?
Yeah.
To this individual, because they don't even know.
Yeah.
But if they knew what their values were and it was different than yours, then I could confront you and say, dude, that's not cool because of da-da-da-da-da, because I know my values. And then if your values contradict it and say no because of da-da-da-da-da, then cool, we can challenge each other's beliefs in that moment.
Right.
But we can't challenge each other's beliefs in any moment if we don't even know what our beliefs are.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Man.
And so
it's I think you got to find what works for you though too, right? Because there's different perceptions. You know what I mean? Like Trev does like to go to bed at 9 o'clock.
Correct,
I
dude.
don't. You know what I mean? And so, so you can't really fall into what someone else does. You got to find what works for you. You know what I mean? But you're right. You got to have an aligned like goal, right? Like Trev's got goals that we have goals together. We have separate goals. Like, but man, I feel like it's my role. I've got to go out and cultivate those relationships. You know what I mean? So it's like, but I'll also, dude, if I go to bed at 9, I'll lay there for 3 hours, dude.
I know.
You know what I mean?
We go to,
and I'll still
we
get
go
up
to
at
the
5
hotel
a.m.,
sometimes at 9.
Yeah.
And you're on the phone or
dude,
watching TV,
yeah.
And
I don't know.
Dude, it don't matter.
So yeah, there's definitely routines, and then there's standards and values, and there's perceptions of those things. What I like that we've done over the years, just looking at how business was originally versus the middle part versus these last 5 years is like the values and standards that I know we've all been aligned on, even when things we have reached comfort levels.
Sure.
That's allowed culture to dip and certain things to take control and slip in. But we've always been like, we got to do things the right way.
Yeah.
We don't allow the salesman to lie to get deals. We don't allow fulfillment to half-ass and not go above and beyond for the customer. Like, we know that like the best marketing plan in the universe is to do a great job, right? And then everybody you serve will also serve you in return, right? And so like I think we've always had standards and values when it comes to that, but it's crazy to see like how it does kind of slip, even though you still believe that, when there's something off, and it usually is something off in you, right? Like you're like, oh man, there's something off. Like if your personal values and standards have slipped, then it does start to slip internally, right? Like if you're hustling and grinding and working your ass off to reach a certain level in business and you're there, and then all of a sudden that comfort kicks in a little bit, like even though you still believe about all these standards and these ethics and everything in your business, I don't know. Maybe it's because
you don't know, dude.
You're not there as much. You're not as active as much. You're not as present in that as much. And so all of a sudden, like
that's why consistency.
All these things start falling apart.
That's why consistency is so important in anything that we do, because we'll drift away from 100% of experiences over time.
Yeah,
that's just the way it works. We've all been at a funeral before and sat there and cried or whatever. Booger running faces and shit. Like, they're so right. I need to tell my loved ones how much I love them. And like, I just need to do better about staying in contact. I'm gonna do that. Like, I'm not, because they're up there. If you have the chance, tell some people that you love them now. Like all this shit. And it's like,
they're regretful.
You're
right?
like, sure, everybody should. And everybody in that moment's like, I'm gonna. In that experience.
Yeah.
But then life happens and it drifts you away from that experience, and then you're the same motherfucker 3 weeks later.
But you don't realize it.
But you don't realize it, at all. But that's why, if that was really your true intent, then you would literally the next day have to reach out to somebody and start making that a habit in that moment, where you will drift so far away from that experience and you'll forget about that little micro commitment that you made to yourself until the next funeral, and then you do the same thing over and over, because that's the habit
I've done
of funerals.
That in funerals.
So have I. That's how I know. That's how I know how I have it as an example. I didn't talk to somebody about it and have them share their experience with me. That's just how I see it. Because I'm guilty of drifting away from an experience that was like, damn, that's powerful.
Yeah.
I need to change X. And then you get back to your life and your life says, X isn't important, dude.
Yeah.
You're like, just worry about yourself, right? Like, and then we all worry about ourselves, and then we get depressed when you're only thinking about yourself. Really, life is more about giving, looking around, seeing where you can give or where you can serve. And if you're doing that all the time, you're busy helping other people, and that feels good. Yeah. And secondly, when you're busy helping other people and serving other, you're not in your own head, beating yourself up about something or getting depressed or whatever, feeling sorry for yourself or whatever it is. Be of service, right? And that should be any individual's part of their standards or their values, right? Like, really, when it boils down to it, what somebody's main core standard or value should be is to perform at whatever their today's great is. Now, somebody's today great might be to run a mile. That might be their difficult, their extreme struggle. But somebody else's difficult might be 20 miles. The question is not this guy over here that can run 20 miles is a greater individual. To me, it's the individual that's doing what's difficult to them today. So tomorrow it could become easy. And if they're doing whatever their great is today, they'll become greater tomorrow. And then if they become greater tomorrow, every single tomorrow, eventually they just by default become great.
Right.
And so, and I was trying to talk about that on Instagram stories today. I was like, look, at one point I was a heroin addict, and my today's great might have been just not using drugs.
Yeah.
When if I literally just woke up tomorrow and just didn't use drugs, and that was the only thing that I did that day, that's not me laying down a great day.
Yeah.
But that was me laying down a great day 13 fucking years ago.
Right.
My laying down a great today will look a lot different than my great in 3 years.
Yeah.
But as long as I lay down a great today at the version of me that I am right now, the version of me will continue to get better and my great will continue to look greater.
Yep.
That's just the way that it works.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's a standard that we should all operate at, is what does your today great look like? And what are you doing to redefine what is difficult to you?
Yeah.
Or are you just repeating the same thing and saying it's difficult, it's difficult? That means you're just not getting any better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
All that I'm gonna talk.
I'm gonna do
Gonna. You know, I saw a meme just the other day that said, who posted that? But I was like, it's fucking true. But it was persistent. Persistent will get you everything you want. Consistent will help you keep it. Right? And I was like, damn, it's so true. Right?
That is.
It's just aligning with what you just said, right? Like, you know, you go through this phase of like, you're just so persistent because it's survival for you. But when it's not survival anymore and you're fucking good at whatever business you built and income continues to flow, your book of business is paying well, it's like, it's pretty easy to stop being consistent with the things that you were persistent with once you reach that level of comfort
Absolutely
zone.
it is.
And so at the end of the day, man, like, that's the hardest part, is once you hit those levels, is, you know, what needs to happen to you to bring it to your forefront of awareness that like consistent action of what got you there is still what's gonna help you continue to climb into that next level, right? Because we all know that fulfillment really comes from continued growth, right? It doesn't come from like sitting in that comfort zone
or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's why you see billionaires still showing up on the job. Like Elon Musk is still buying businesses, Twitter,
right?
You know what I mean? To try to continue to add to his legacy, right?
Well, he has a set of standards too, and he's like, I believe I can make a difference with buying this platform and, you know, changing it away from what it's been going towards. And like even freaking the ex-CEO, the Dorsey dude, what's his name again?
Jack
Dorsey came out and was like endorsing Elon. He's the guy to do it. I'm very disappointed with what Twitter's become. I saw that article today too.
Oh, wow.
I don't even freaking read the news, bro. This shit, people keep sharing this shit that we follow. So now I'm like, well, I got to read that. So I read that article today, and Jack Dorsey did. He came out and said, Elon's the guy to do this. I'm actually really excited. I don't like what Twitter's become, and it's fallen away from this, and it's one of my biggest regrets since I was stepped down as CEO.
You know, and maybe that's true. Maybe he got sick of having an overlord, you know, tell him what he can or can't do. So if he just sells it, at least he's out from underneath that, and it's not his problem if it's open source. But maybe that was his intent. He got caught up with the wrong people, and started, you know, they started. I don't know what's happening behind the scenes. But if he had a certain set of standards and values that he operated by, he would have never allowed that type of evil to creep in, because his standards and values would have had that fortress built around him. Said, no, that's not who I am, and I will not do that. I'm not going to conform to that. Right. That's just is what it is. And you talked about getting to a certain level and getting comfortable. And when you're saying that, and I was sitting there thinking about it, but if you have standards and values that you're actually practicing each day, and one of them is to continue to get better or whatever it is, those again should be your North Star, so that complacency doesn't kick in. You know, one of the differences is if you have standards and values, you know why you're doing what you're doing, which makes it a lot easier to do the thing that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And so, like 75 Hard this year, like I didn't post like the app thing at all, like day 1, day 2, which is what I did it the first time, like all the time, like anybody else, right? I want public recognition, right? Like, look, I'm a badass too, motherfuckers, right? Like, see what I'm doing. Right. But again, the more that I'm like ironing out my own values and my own standards, I don't need anybody else's fucking recognition. Yeah. I don't give a shit if you know that I do 75 Hard or not, because I'm not doing it for you. Right. I'm doing it for myself and my own mental health, and because that's a standard that I want to operate at, because I feel better when I pull that lever every single day. Right. So am I doing it because I feel better, or am I doing it because maybe somebody will think I'm cooler than I really am, because I checked all the boxes and I showed people, yo, I did it too. Yeah. And again, now you're just one of many. When I was like, yo, if I'm really going to do this one for me, like, let's do this behind the scenes, and let's just do that. Right. And even still, and there's a lot of power in that when you're doing something for you and you don't even have the accountability piece of a whole lot of other people knowing about it. Yeah. Then you still do it when it's difficult, then you're operating with your standards and your values rather than the standard of value of, man, I want attention, or I want to look cool, I want to be a part of that club. And again, we're all guilty of doing that. I'm not like talking down to any human that's listening to this podcast.
We all go through it. We all do it.
We're human.
Right.
We start as an adolescent, and we grow up, and look, we're beings where we're tribal. We want to be a part of things. And if there's what you think is cool, people that do that's cool, so I want to do that. Guess what? I'm guilty of it too.
Right.
We both look up to Andy Frisella. There's people that we look up to as well that we're like, hey, if they're doing that and their success, I want to do that, right? Yeah. But again, you just got to do everything for the right reasons, right? Like I like going to bed early. Yeah. Like if Kel just said, okay, he saw it, and I'm not saying me in general, maybe somebody that Ed Milet says, I go to bed at 9:30. Yeah. So Kel's like, okay, well, I look up to him, I'm going to, I guess, just do what they do. And that was the whole point when I was talking to Yella say, is like, do you, dude? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, figure out how you operate at your best. That could be not going to bed until 3 a.m. and you sleep in till 9 and you get your 6 hours out. Yeah. Everybody's great looks different. Right. But figure out how you can operate at your great, whether that's a morning person, a night person, a middle, it does not matter. Just pull the levers throughout the day that serve you every single day, whether that's at 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. I don't give a shit. Yep. There's 24 hours in a day. Pull the lever in any one of those hours and find the system that makes you the most productive you that you possibly can be.
Absolutely.
Don't adopt Trevor. Don't adopt Kale's. Listen to what people are doing that are of success and that are continuing to try to reach new levels, and keep your ear to the streets of like, oh, well, that sounds kind of cool. I'd like to try it. Yeah. And then incorporate it wherever that is in your day, whether that's in the morning or the evening or it doesn't matter. Right. The idea is to give you ideas so that your brain starts turning and you figure out how to pull that information and apply it.
Yeah, right? Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, like I will say this too about all my standards over the years and values is like, even going out and building relationships after an event or a meetup or whatever, it's like, going to the steakhouses and going to even like we went one night to that like Sambuca place. It was like this little dance place. It wasn't bad, right? It was great. And then you go out on the patio, you chat, you're just, get to know people. All that stuff's great. But every time I've gone to like the strip club, right? Back in the days, like these guys would be like at a convention, like everyone would end up at the strip club. So you're like, oh, well, we'll go to the strip club because the guy I want his business is there and like whatever, right? So you're there, right? And anyway, so I had to change that standard, right? Because the last time I even told my wife, like, I don't care to go to those places, but hey, so-and-so was going there and trying to get their business. So I went, and I noticed she didn't care for a long time. Then she cared. Right. And I was like, oh,
when you realized that you're like, oh, okay.
But then I realized every business person that I used to pull their business, like at the strip clubs and stuff, those ones never lasted anyway, dude.
They didn't have a whole lot of standards. And so like maybe that was the first inkling. Yeah. But again, this is
I didn't meet Jeff Lerner at a strip club, dude. Yeah. You know what I mean? I met him at literally a place where he's trying to better himself and his family.
Self-improvement
right?
Places.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Places like that. And so I started reflecting on that, even I don't know, year and a half ago, and I was like, I didn't even
put that together. That's cool that you saw that pattern. You're
it's like, man, it's still an environment, right? You're still putting yourself in an environment of like, and there were some people there, bro, at the last time when I actually confirmed that my wife was really annoyed by that. There were some people there that you would never expect to be there.
When you sound like it was nothing. I confirmed it. She was like, hey, Kel, I'd just like to confirm I don't like that. Well, usually that's not how it goes down. We won't tell you the whole, I don't even know how it went down, but you just made it sound so simple. She confirmed.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I like that comfort. Yeah. Confirmed. Okay.
Well, she's never been the jealous type, bro. I know, and she's always just been like, do your thing. She's supportive. Yeah. And so, but this last time she's like, it doesn't feel right. And I'm like, you're right. But here's the thing, man, because we got to have family values too, right? Like, go. It's like, well, and again, I can't sit here and come home and talk to my kids about how you should operate in the world when, even if they know or not, it still doesn't feel good when you're like, I was just closing deals at the strip club last night,
Doing it for you.
Then I'm over here trying to tell my daughter.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. We'll eat well for the next forever.
But if I do reflect on it, dude, it's like, you know what? It's still an environment that I needed to change a standard on, because even though, I was highly successful at pulling relationships in, doing whatever it took to pull those relationships in, those ones were never like the ones of value because they didn't have values, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I totally jive with what you're saying, So if you're like, hey, I'm okay with staying out late to cultivate relationships after an event, end up at the steakhouse, do all those things, but like you don't feel good about where everyone's going after that, you don't have to go. You should still have had plenty of time to cultivate that relationship and still maybe go back to your hotel room at 11 when everyone goes to the place that's open till 3, 4 in the morning, you know? Yeah. And so it's, for me, it's not about, I guess a value of like a certain bedtime, right? But it's but it is for you, and that's okay.
Yes,
but it is like you do need to kind of take an audit or have some awareness about the environment you're putting yourself into, right? And so that was a thing for me.
Well, it's just being, as you get older, you become more self-aware. Like, look, like if I pull these levers, I feel good about myself. If I wake up early, I drink water, and I exercise, I feel good. Guess what? There was also a lever that I pulled back in the day, and that lever was partying, hanging out after 10 o'clock at night with alcohol involved at bars or clubs or whatever.
Right.
When I pull that lever, what most often happens to me, Kale?
Yeah, Trev's had some incidents.
Run-ins. Okay, with alcohol. I wouldn't say the law. The law just happened to be around when I found out. So I'd get in a fight, I'd go to jail. When I pulled that lever, the likelihood of me getting in a fight and going to jail was greater. So if I continue to pull that lever and I see a pattern and the pattern isn't good and I keep pulling it, who's the fucking dumbass?
Yeah.
This guy.
Right.
So I need to know myself well enough and be like, I just don't operate well in that environment. So what do? I remove that environment even as an option just in general, right? Yeah. And I'm like, okay, over here. So I remove that one bad option that's a lever. I don't want to pull that anymore. Okay, what are the good ones that make me feel good about me, make me feel confident, make me feel like I'm of character and integrity? I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to pull those levers every fucking day over and over and over like clockwork. And then I'm going to design a life around that so that I can ensure that I am pulling these on a day-to-day basis because I value it so much that my life will be designed around the things that make me feel best.
Right.
And if I feel the best that I possibly can feel because I keep pulling those levers, I believe everybody that's in my ecosystem will be taken care of. Loved ones, employees, partnerships with, all of that, right? Mm-hmm. Like we all have to be taking care of self, but being of service, which is kind of weird, right? Because we talked about not focusing too much on self, and that's more thoughts mentally. Yeah. You should be focused on self-care and pulling those levers that your body needs and your mind needs to operate at a healthy level. But,
well, it does feel the best to
and you have structure
and serve. Yeah.
We talked about structure and values.
Right.
You're creating structure for your day every day. Why is that important? People have structure 5 days a week. So usually the world creates structure for people. Let me explain this. Okay. The world creates structure for people. Here's how I know that. Because a lot of people's time in terms of when they wake up is dictated by when their kids need to go to school and when they need to go to work. So it's a system that's dictating the time that they get up because they got to do this thing.
Right.
The system is telling them, you've got to take your kid to school.
Right.
So it's the system telling you what time you need to wake up to do that. And then you got to go to work. So that system's telling you what time you got to get up to go to work, right? You're not really creating a life and you're not dictating things. Something else is dictating it, right? Yeah. And so what are you really dictating? What are you taking control over and saying, this is what I do at this time every single day?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it's a 9 o'clock at night thing every day. Maybe that's when somebody exercises because somebody's working different shifts, like a night shift. Yeah. They go into work at midnight every night. So they sleep during the day and they wake up at 5 and then they start their routine, right? Whatever that is. But the idea is, since somebody's controlling your day Monday through Friday because of school or job or whatever, then on the weekend, what happens when you have free time? Nothing.
Yeah.
You don't do shit with it because nobody's dictating your day. Nobody's telling you what to do. Right. So you usually just fuck it off or slack off, right? But the idea really is since there's 7 days a week, now your body's feeling inconsistent.
Yeah.
Because it's doing something for a portion of the week, then it completely does something different for multiple days out of the week. Right. And then you jump into this other system where it's back to work and school, right? So your body's feeling inconsistency with the time it's sleeping, with the time it's waking up, with what you're eating during the week versus the weekends, because most people usually eat worse on the weekends than they do the week. So there's so many changes as you go into a weekend. No wonder why emotionally you're not stable,
right?
Or you feel different. Every day is different in terms of like, I'm angry this day, I'm happy this day, whatever. The idea is if you have consistent inputs every single day, the output should be pretty consistent.
Right.
And I was done letting any yo-yos happen, really. And I wanted to design something that's 7 days a week that creates consistency and structure for me so that I can have consistency in the way that I feel.
Right.
Right. And really that's what's important. And I believe a lot of people are failing at doing something every single day rather than letting the world dictate what they do at what times during the day. And then on the weekends, fuck it off and then go back into the system.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm seeing happen in society, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so if you dictate, if you figure out what your values are and you create structure in your life,
you can be more disciplined for it, man, because that's what a lot of people are going to say.
That's a North Star,
well,
right
Trev's
there.
just way more disciplined than me. And it's like, no, Trev knows what he wants.
Trevor was a heroin addict 13 years ago.
Exactly.
Used to have guns to his head, knives to his throat, that's been punched in the face,
right.
That's had a hammer thrown at his head, that's slept on the floor,
yeah.
That's was walking down the street not knowing where he was going to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the same discipline, Trevor, that we're talking about?
Right.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Starts with fucking one thing.
Yeah.
Values.
Yeah. It's true.
Have values.
Another point I was thinking of when you're talking about that is like I know some kids that are kind of going through some systems. This one kid, his mother passed away just recently, like 6 months ago, right? And so now this kid's like got structure, right? At because he didn't have that with his mom.
Yeah.
Okay, she was an alcoholic, and there were some things that happened, COVID, and all these other things, plus her health. Like she ended up passing away in the hospital. Well. So now he's living with the grandparents, and the grandparents have given him structure, right? And it was tough at first, but he's happier than ever. The dad now wants him to move out to California. He barely knows his dad. His dad just found out, like, oh, well, he's going to get survivor benefits and get a paycheck, right? And he's like, oh, Grandma, I don't want to go out there. Like, every time I've spent a summer out there, because it's far away, every time I've spent a summer out there, it's just like,
whatever, no structure.
There's like 8 kids living in a 2-bedroom house, and like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just no structure. Dad works every day, mom works every day. There's no structure, right? And he does not want to go, but he might not have a choice because that guy has parental rights. But that kid is fighting to stay with grandma and grandpa. Why? Because he has structure there.
People thrive in structure.
They do, and there's other
chaos
kids.
Without.
I can give other stories of kids when they're just like divorced, 2 homes. The one that has the most structure is where the kids want to be. If you go look at the research on it, it's like 99% of the time, like kids want to be where they have the most structure, right? Because even if they're not conscious of it, it's like that's where they're the most productive. So
that's where every human is most productive. The problem is these kids grow up to be adults and expect somebody else to still create structure for them when it's not going to happen.
Right.
They eventually need to come to the realization that you are now an adult. Nobody's over you.
Right.
It's up to you to create for you.
Right.
That structure is only created based upon the values that you say that you have as an individual, which will be the guiding light for you to create structure around those values so that you can become the individual that you want to become.
Right.
Right. Guess
100%.
what? Somebody that's not a morning person, that doesn't label themselves as that or whatever, on day one of them trying to become a morning person, their brain's like, what the hell are you? They have to act as if they're a morning person for a long enough period of time, which will make them feel like they're an imposter.
Right.
Doesn't feel like they're a morning person when they're getting up early at first.
Yeah.
Because they're exhausted.
Yeah.
But eventually over the course of a year, they become a morning person, right?
Yeah.
So whenever we're trying to be greater than our current self, you will feel imposter syndrome because you are being an imposter to the entire history of your entire life. You're stretching outside of everything that you've ever been. So therefore, that's when imposter syndrome kicks in. But you have to continue to honor these actions that are of value to you because these actions are the actions of the individual that you want to become. So you're taking these actions because you know that that's who you want to become, but yet you feel like an imposter when you're slowly taking these actions because it's greater than your current self. But in reality, if you're not living somewhat in imposter syndrome, are you really trying to stretch yourself ever and get outside of what your current grade is? And really, I think that when people touch imposter syndrome and again, they have to stand alone sometimes in their own values, like going to bed and watching people go out. Again, that has its own difficulties, right?
Dude, it's hard.
And
it's hard to
it
change
is
those
temptation,
things,
right? Sure. But again, I still know if I do it, I'm gonna feel like shit the next day. I'm gonna be way more unproductive. Like, what's more important? An immediate dopamine hit of going to hang out or making an entire day tomorrow productive, which is what I traveled there for. But I know myself well enough in terms of where I can operate at a productive level, and I just have to create the structure around that.
I really like what you said there, though. Like, you are an imposter to your person, your old person, right? Your old self. Like, you feel like an imposter when you're making those changes because you are. You are an imposter to that person.
Your brain has no history of you operating at that level.
But you want to be an imposter in order to change, right?
You have to be an imposter for a long enough period of time for your brain to identify that that's who you now are as an individual. And your brain is going to call you an imposter until you pull that lever so many times over that it's like, this is who you are. Cool. I'll open up that neural pathway. So that's the easiest path to go down now because you've proven to me that this is of importance enough that you fought back every time I tried to sell you an excuse to pull back and bitch out. So since you fought back so much, I'm done fighting you. I'll conform. I'll bend over. It's whatever you want at this point. Now you're in control. So you have to go through that battle of imposter and your brain selling you, that ain't you, my dude, and you keep showing up and pulling those same levers until you adopt that is who you are to your core. And that's really how you become better, right?
So it's when that noise stops.
Man, today's episode seems super shitty, not impactful at all. I don't even know if we'll post it. No, I thought today was good, dude. I thought today was really good, and it reminds me of, like, look at kids, growing up in bad neighborhoods that don't have structure. What do they do? They go into a system that has structure, even if it's a gang. But it has structure.
It's true.
It has hierarchy.
It's true.
You have leaders. You have things that you need to do each day to prove to this organization that you're a part of that organization. So they find structure, good or bad. Everybody wants it. Everybody will find it. If you do not create a structure that is positive and you create it, then you're leaving yourself susceptible to anybody else's structure, whether that is positive or negative. It could, hopefully you surround yourself with something positive and you fall victim to a positive environment. But
I mean, if you're an adult, you're listening to this, like, you have to understand that you have a choice, right? Like, so many people just go through life thinking they don't have a choice. Like, they just think, I have to join a gang because I'm from the bad neighborhood, right? And it's like, there's so much power in your choice as an adult. And I say that all the time to people, man. I'm like, well, you're adult, so why don't you choose? Nobody can choose it for you, right? Like, you have to choose it for yourself. You do choose if you go down the gang route. You do based on your upbringing. Like, it's people justify, man. They're just like, well, it's who I am because it's how I grew up. It's like, no, you have a choice. You have a choice.
You asked me 20 years ago if I had to be a morning person. Not happening, bro. I was just like every other kid that closed the curtains and slept in until noon or 1 during the summers, bro.
Tinfoiled your window
dude,
up.
All of it, dude. It looked like a crackhead house, bro, just so not an ounce of light would come in. It ain't a crackhead, bro. I'm a kid trying to sleep in until 3 in the afternoon, just like every other one in the summer. And again, like, I could change because now I'm a morning person. But I had to fight that fight and make that battle my bitch in order to develop this brain that believes that it's now a morning person. Right. So it's all about repetitiveness, consistency, and again, because otherwise we drift away from those values or standards or whatever it is. Right. So
do your kids struggle getting up?
Or
Or they get up pretty easy?
Claire, I don't wake her up. She's upstairs. She gets herself ready, all that. I did at first when she was getting up at 6 because she has to get at the bus by 6:50. We make her ride a bus, dude. I ain't trying to make her think she's cool and drop her off. I'm gonna be like, no, dude.
We don't even have one at our house.
Yeah, dude. Well, pay a bus driver to come because they feel like an idiot, and they should as a kid. Don't feel like you're cooler than you are.
I still just battle my kids, but we've been getting up early for a while. So
now she's good. Major's a shithead, dude. He's terrible at getting up early, but he on Saturday and Sunday he gets up early with me and goes to the gym with me. And I just have to whisper, dude, I shake him. You want to go to the gym? Yeah. He gets out real quick. If I just try to wake him up for school, dude, it's a rock. So that shows you that you actually can wake up really early, easy. You just have to have a value structure to the reason why you're waking up. And you actually have to want to do that thing that you're waking up for, and your body will be up, no problem.
Yeah.
It's just you dread the thing that you're normally waking up for, whether it's work or school or going to the gym or whatever. Eventually you'll learn to love it. Now, if I don't go to the gym, I feel like shit all day, like I have jet lag, like I didn't move my blood,
Yeah.
And so now I've created a different problem that if I don't go, I feel like shit, right?
Yeah.
Which is a good problem to have,
absolutely.
but a problem nonetheless.
Yeah.
So, guys, if you can't tell, me and Kel, I think we're kind of turning it up a notch, in terms of recently.
Yeah.
You guys will continue to see that. You're going to see a complete takeover soon enough with content once Corey does his data dump of 3 or 4 posts a day. You guys are holding back on us. I'm waiting for this. So they've been compiling content for like months now, and they have a massive backlog of content just to dump on your asses soon enough. And so we plan on doing a little bit of a takeover. So I hope you enjoyed us while we've been small. And it'll be fun to take you on the ride over the next 2 years. So guys, here's the deal. Again, we're trying to get to that 1 million download mark. Everybody has that next hurdle. That's our next hurdle, right?
Yeah.
I think we're 30,000 away or something like that. By the time this comes out, maybe 25,000. If you can, if there's any time to share the show, let people know that there's value in it. It's right now, so that we can try to hit that at our 3-year anniversary. And we appreciate you guys taking the time in general to listen and to support, 2 yahoos from, a small town in Utah.
That's right.
It's fun to do it, and we'll continue to do it. We'll continue to serve, continue to share, and that's how we're going to scratch each other's backs. So appreciate you guys tuning in for another week. Take care.
Peace.